The Silent Princess and the Ruthless Baron. The planet Chiron was a cold and dark world. Its sky was always covered in thick red clouds, and the land was filled with towering castles made of black stone. One of the biggest castles belonged to Baron Vorax, a powerful and cruel ruler. His people feared him, and his enemies hated him. He controlled everything: land, soldiers, and even lives. Baron Vorax had one rule: strength was everything. The weak had no place in his world. That was why he despised his own daughter. Her name was Lyra, and she was born different. Unlike the other Tyronians, she had no voice. She could not speak, could not command, and could not scream for help. To the Baron, she was a disgrace. A ruler's child should be strong, not silent. For years, Lyra was locked away in the highest tower of the castle. She was not allowed to attend royal meetings, not allowed to train like the warriors, and not allowed to show her face in public. The Baron pretended she did not exist. But Lyra was not weak. Every day, she stood by the large window of her tower and watched the world below. She saw the soldiers marching, the prisoners being dragged to the mines, and the slaves working under the burning red sun. Most of them were humans, weak creatures captured from distant planets. They were small, fragile, and had no special powers like the Tyronians. But one human caught her eye. The arrival of the humans. One evening, a new group of human slaves arrived at the castle. They were dirty, tired, and chained together. The Baron stood on his high balcony, looking down at them like they were insects. "These creatures think they are strong," the Baron said, his deep voice echoing through the courtyard. "But here, they will learn their place." The soldiers laughed as they pushed the humans forward. One of them fell to the ground. A soldier lifted his boot to kick him, but then he stopped. Lyra saw why. The human was not afraid. He did not beg for mercy. He did not cry. He simply stood up, wiped the blood from his mouth, and stared at the Baron with cold eyes. Lyra's heart pounded. This human was different. His name was Ethan. A silent connection. That night, Ethan was given the worst job: cleaning the castle gardens. He was surrounded by alien plants with sharp thorns and glowing leaves. The other slaves worked silently, afraid of punishment. Lyra, hidden behind a large window of her tower, watched him. Ethan looked up, and their eyes met. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then, Lyra slowly raised her hand. A small, careful wave. Ethan frowned, confused. But after a second, he nodded. A simple, small movement, but it meant something. Lyra felt a strange warmth in her chest. For the first time in her life, someone had acknowledged her. The Baron's cruelty. The next morning, Baron Vorax sat on his throne, enjoying a feast. He ate strange alien fruits and drank from a golden cup, ignoring the suffering of those outside his castle walls. A soldier entered and bowed. "My lord, the humans are weak." One of them collapsed from exhaustion. The Baron smirked. "Then he is useless. Dispose of him." The soldier nodded and left. Lyra, standing behind a pillar, clenched her fists. She wanted to scream, but she couldn't. She wanted to tell her father he was a monster, but she had no voice. She ran to her tower and looked out the window again. Ethan was still there, still working, his hands covered in dirt and sweat. She had to warn him. But how? Desperate, she grabbed a piece of white cloth and tied it to a long stick. She waved it from the window, hoping he would understand. Ethan looked up and narrowed his eyes. He saw the cloth, saw her face, and then he nodded again. Lyra didn't know if he truly understood, but she had to try. She turned away from the window, heart racing. For the first time in her life, she had done something. The suspense builds. That night, as the castle torches flickered in the wind, Ethan was called to the training grounds. The Baron stood in the shadows, watching. "You seem strong," the Baron said. "Stronger than the others. But strength must be tested." Two large Xyronian warriors stepped forward, their sharp claws glinting in the firelight. "Survive," the Baron said, "and you may live another day." Ethan rolled his shoulders. He did not look afraid. Up in the tower, Lyra covered her mouth with her hands. She knew what this was, a test of survival, a punishment, and if Ethan failed, he would die. The forbidden friendship. Ethan stood in the center of the training pit, surrounded by towering walls made of black stone. The air smelled of dust and sweat. Torches flickered in the night, casting long shadows across the ground. Across from him stood two Xyronian warriors, massive creatures with thick, scaled skin and sharp claws. Their yellow eyes glowed in the dark, filled with hunger. This was not a fight. It was an execution. High above, Baron Vorex sat on his throne, watching with amusement. "Show me, human," the Baron said, his voice cold and mocking. "Are you stronger than the rest, or will you die just as easily?" The warriors stepped forward. Ethan clenched his fists. He had no weapons, no armor, just his mind and his instincts. He took a slow breath. "Stay calm. Stay focused." The first warrior lunged. Ethan dodged, barely avoiding the swipe of its claws. The second came from behind, aiming for his head. Ethan dropped to the ground. The attack missed by inches. He rolled away, grabbing a handful of sand and throwing it into the warrior's eyes. The creature roared, stumbling back. The Baron's amused smirk faded. He leaned forward. Ethan wasn't just surviving. He was fighting back. A silent witness. From her tower window, Lyra watched with wide eyes. She had never seen a human fight before. The other slaves always cowered, always obeyed. But Ethan was different. He was smaller than the warriors, weaker in size, but he used his speed, his intelligence. He was thinking, outsmarting them. For the first time in her life, Lyra felt something new, hope. Then, suddenly, one of the warriors struck. Fast, brutal. A sharp claw slashed across Ethan's arm. Blood spilled onto the sand. Lyra gasped, her hands trembling. Ethan gritted his teeth, stepping back. His arm burned, but he couldn't stop now. The warriors were circling him like predators sensing weakness. The Baron laughed. "So much for your cleverness." Lyra couldn't look away. Her father was enjoying this. The warriors would kill Ethan, and no one would care. She gripped the stone windowsill. Her heart pounded. She had to do something. But what? She had no voice, no power. She looked around desperately. Then her eyes landed on the large metal bell hanging in the corner of her room, the one that signaled the guards. An idea sparked in her mind. No one noticed her. Her father's attention was on the fight. The crowd was too busy cheering for blood. Lyra rushed to the bell. Her hands tightened around the thick rope. And then she pulled. The sound rang through the night. Loud, sharp, unexpected. The Baron's eyes snapped up in surprise. The warriors hesitated for a fraction of a second. It was all Ethan needed. With a sudden burst of speed, he lunged forward, twisting his body at the last second. He jumped onto the warrior's back, locking his arm around its thick throat. The creature thrashed, trying to shake him off, but Ethan held tight. He used his legs to wrap around the beast's torso, pressing against a weak point near the ribs. The second warrior hesitated, unsure whether to attack or not. The Baron slammed his fist against his throne. "Fools! Attack him!" But it was too late. Ethan twisted his body, using all his strength. Crack! The warrior's body stiffened, its legs buckled, and then it collapsed, hitting the ground with a heavy thud. Dead. Silence. For the first time, the Baron looked shocked. Ethan slowly stood, breathing hard, blood dripping down his arm. He turned to face the second warrior. The creature looked at the Baron for orders. The Baron's face twisted in rage. "Enough," he growled. "The human lives." For now. Ethan didn't move. His body ached, his arm burned, But he stayed standing, unbroken, and high above, in her lonely tower, Lyra smiled. She had helped. For the first time, she had changed something. A forbidden friendship begins. Later that night, Ethan was thrown into the slave quarters, a dark, cold space with stone floors and iron bars. His arm was wrapped in torn cloth, and his body ached from the fight. He lay against the wall, exhausted. Then a shadow moved. He looked up. At the window, hidden in the darkness, was Lyra. For a moment, neither of them spoke. They simply stared at each other. Then, slowly, Lyra raised her hand. A silent greeting. Ethan frowned. Why was she here? Lyra hesitated. Then, carefully, she touched her throat and shook her head. Ethan's eyes narrowed. She can't speak. She was like him, trapped, powerless. But unlike the others, she had helped him. Ethan's expression softened. Slowly, he lifted his own hand, and he waved back. A silent understanding passed between them. For the first time in her life, Lyra had found someone who saw her. For the first time in his life, Ethan had found an ally in this cruel world. A forbidden friendship had begun. But neither of them knew that this was just the beginning. The Baron's wrath. The castle halls were silent, but the air was thick with tension. Baron Vorax sat on his throne, his sharp claws tapping against the armrest. His golden eyes burned with rage. Ethan should have died. No human had ever defeated a Xyronian warrior in single combat, and certainly not a slave. It was a humiliation the Baron would not forget. The fight had been a test, a way to break the human spirit, yet Ethan had survived. Worse, the Baron suspected that his own daughter had interfered. He clenched his fist. Lyra had always been a weakness, an embarrassment to his bloodline. But now, she was a problem. Bring her to me, he ordered. The guards hesitated. My lord, she. Now. His voice was cold as steel. A father's fury. Lyra stood before her father in the great hall, her hands clasped tightly. The cold floor pressed against her bare feet. The Baron loomed over her, his massive frame casting a shadow. You dare interfere in my affairs. His voice was low, dangerous. Lyra did not flinch. The Baron's eyes narrowed. You rang the bell, didn't you? She didn't answer, couldn't answer. His lip curled. You think you can defy me? A mute, useless girl who cannot even speak. Lyra's hands trembled, but she forced herself to stand tall. The Baron grabbed her wrist, his claws pressing into her skin. You will learn your place. He turned to his guards. Lock her away. She will remain in the tower. No food, no water. Lyra gasped silently, her mouth opening in shock. This was not just punishment, it was a death sentence. The guards hesitated, exchanging glances. The Baron's punishments were cruel, but this was his own daughter. Move, he snapped. Lyra was dragged away, her heart pounding in terror. Ethan's silent plan. Meanwhile, deep in the slave quarters, Ethan sat against the cold stone wall, his arms still wrapped in bloody cloth. The fight had left him battered, but he was still alive. He thought about the girl in the window, the girl who had saved him, the girl who had risked everything. Something was wrong. He hadn't seen her since the fight. The other humans huddled together in the corner, exhausted and defeated. None of them looked at him. None of them cared. But Ethan wasn't like them. He wasn't just going to sit and wait for his next beating. He needed to know what happened to Lyra. The escape. Late that night, the guards changed shifts. The torches burned low, casting flickering shadows across the walls. Ethan listened carefully. He had learned how the guards moved, when they spoke, when they looked away. And now he had his chance. With careful movements, he reached for the loose stone he had been prying free for days. It slid out with a soft scrape. A tunnel, just large enough for him to crawl through. He exhaled slowly. Here goes nothing. Slipping into the narrow space, he moved quickly, his heart pounding. The tunnel was tight, the air heavy with dust. He didn't know exactly where it led, only that it was old, unused. A rat scurried past his hand. He kept moving. Finally, after what felt like forever, he saw light. Peeking through the cracks, he realized he was under the castle. And just ahead, he saw a familiar shape. Lyra, a friend in chains. Lyra sat curled against the cold stone wall, her hands bound with thick ropes. Her breath was slow, weak. The guards had not given her food or water. She was fading. Ethan clenched his jaw. He had to get her out. His fingers brushed against a jagged piece of metal in the dirt, a broken chain link, sharp enough to cut. He worked quickly, slipping through the cracks in the stone wall. His body ached, but he ignored it. He reached Lyra, his hands moving fast. He cut the ropes. Her eyes flickered open, confused. Ethan touched his lips and shook his head. "Stay quiet." Lyra nodded weakly. Carefully, Ethan pulled her up, wrapping an arm around her to help her stand. She was weak, but she could walk. Now came the hard part, getting out. The chase begins. Ethan led Lyra through the dark corridors, his mind racing. He needed a plan. They couldn't go back to the slave quarters. They needed to escape. Footsteps echoed in the hall. The guards. Ethan's grip on Lyra tightened. They were running out of time. Taking a deep breath, he whispered one word. "Run." Lyra understood. Together, they ran. The halls of the castle were endless, but Ethan had studied them. He knew where the guards would be. He knew where the shadows were darkest. They moved silently, slipping past torches and open doors. But just as they reached the lower gates, a voice boomed behind them. "Stop them!" Ethan turned, heart hammering. Baron Vorex stood at the top of the stairs, his golden eyes burning with fury. The hunt had begun. The hidden power. The castle corridors echoed with the sound of heavy boots and growling voices. The hunt had begun. Ethan and Lyra ran. The cold air burned in Ethan's lungs, but he didn't stop. Lyra stumbled, her body weak from days without food or water. He caught her, pulling her forward. Behind them, the Baron's guards stormed down the halls, their armor clanking, their weapons drawn. Find them. Kill the human. Bring the girl back alive. Lyra shivered at her father's words. Alive. That only meant one thing. He wanted to make her suffer. Ethan scanned the halls, thinking fast. The main exits were guarded. They needed another way out. Then he spotted it, an old, narrow staircase leading down into darkness, a way into the lower tunnels. Without hesitation, he grabbed Lyra's hand and pulled her inside. The depths of the castle. The stairs were steep and winding, leading them deep beneath the castle. The walls were damp, covered in moss, and the air smelled of old stone and rusted metal. It was a forgotten place. Torches flickered along the walls, casting eerie shadows. This was no ordinary part of the castle. Lyra touched the walls, her fingers brushing over strange symbols carved into the stone. Ethan noticed them too. "What is this place?" he whispered. Lyra shook her head. Then, a deep growl echoed through the tunnels. Ethan froze. Lyra's grip on his arm tightened. They were not alone. The guardian of the depths. A low, rumbling sound came from the darkness ahead. Then two glowing red eyes appeared. Something massive moved in the shadows. Ethan's breath caught in his throat. A creature stepped into the dim torchlight. It was unlike anything he had seen before. A guardian beast, covered in thick, armored scales, with 4 muscular legs and a long, spiked tail. Its sharp teeth gleamed as it snarled. Lyra took a step back, her heartbeat pounding in her ears. The Baron's secret weapon. The guardian of the depths. Ethan grabbed a broken metal rod from the ground, holding it like a weapon. He had no choice but to fight. The beast charged. Ethan dodged, rolling across the stone floor. The beast's claws slammed down where he had just been, cracking the stone. He barely had time to react before it lunged again, snapping its massive jaws. Lyra's hands trembled. She couldn't let Ethan die. Something inside her snapped. For the first time in her life, Lyra moved on instinct. She raised her hands and spread her fingers. And then, something happened. The ancient carvings on the walls glowed. The air crackled with unseen energy. The guardian froze. Its red eyes flickered, its muscles locked in place. Ethan gasped, stepping back. Lyra. She stood completely still, her hands trembling, eyes wide with shock. She hadn't just stopped the beast, she was controlling it. The guardian lowered its head, bowing before her. The carvings on the walls pulsed with strange light. Ethan realized the truth. This was not just a prison. This was something else. And Lyra was connected to it. The truth of the bloodline. The sound of rushing footsteps echoed from above. The guards were coming. Ethan grabbed Lyra's arm. "We have to go." But Lyra stood frozen, staring at her own hands. What had she just done? She had never spoken, never been strong, never mattered. But now she had power. Ethan shook her. "Lyra, we have to move." She blinked, snapping out of it. The guardian growled lowly but did not attack. It waited, obeyed. Lyra swallowed hard. For the first time, she wasn't afraid. She turned to the beast and raised a hand. "Move." The creature turned, stepping aside. A path opened, leading to an ancient hidden door. Ethan stared at her. "You can control it." Lyra exhaled slowly. She didn't know how. She didn't know why. But she knew one thing. She was not weak. And her father had no idea what she could do. Taking Ethan's hand, she stepped through the doorway, into the unknown. The Baron's rage. Back in the throne room, Baron Vorax sat in boiling rage. His men had failed. His daughter was missing. And worse, his guardian had not obeyed his commands. Something had changed. He clenched his fists. Lyra. She was no longer just a disgrace. She was a threat. His golden eyes darkened. If she would not obey him, he would destroy her. The ultimate punishment. The night sky above Exiron was painted in streaks of deep purple and black, stars barely visible through the thick red clouds. The castle of Baron Vorax stood tall and menacing, its dark stone walls glowing under the eerie torches that lined the courtyard. Inside, the halls were no longer silent. The Baron's rage had filled every corner of the castle. "Find them," he roared, his voice shaking the walls. His guards scattered, moving like a wave of steel and fury. His hunters, elite warriors bred for battle, had already spread across the kingdom, searching for his runaway daughter and the human who had corrupted her. The punishment for betrayal was death. For the human, for Lyra, he would make an example of her, fleeing through the underworld. Ethan and Lyra ran through the ancient tunnels, the dim blue glow of the carvings still pulsing faintly on the walls. Ethan's breathing was heavy, his body still aching from his wounds, but he pushed forward. He had no choice. Beside him, Lyra ran in silence, her mind racing. Her hands still tingled from the power she had used. She had stopped the guardian beast, controlled it. Even now, she could feel something inside her, something awakening. But there was no time to think about that. They had to escape. Ahead, the tunnel sloped upwards, leading toward a hidden exit. Ethan slowed. "We're close." Lyra nodded. Then, a sound behind them. Footsteps. Ethan cursed under his breath. "They found us." He grabbed Lyra's wrist. "Go. Now." They sprinted forward, their feet pounding against the cold stone. The tunnel narrowed, the air becoming damp. Then, the blinding light. They burst out of the tunnel, stumbling into an open valley, surrounded by jagged cliffs. A storm rumbled in the distance. For a brief moment, the wind rushed past them, carrying the scent of the wild forests beyond. Freedom was so close. But then, a deep voice echoed across the valley. "Stop them!" Ethan's stomach dropped. A dozen Cyronian warriors emerged from the cliffs, their silver armor gleaming under the red-tinted sky. Behind them, stepping through the tunnel, stood the Baron. His golden eyes burned with fury. Lyra's blood turned to ice. They were trapped. The trial of death. The guards seized them. Ethan fought back, twisting and kicking, but he was outnumbered. A heavy blow struck the back of his head, and the world spun. He fell to his knees, gasping. Lyra struggled, but her father's grip was like iron. "You have disgraced me," the Baron hissed. "You, my own daughter, siding with a human." Lyra stared up at him, her silver eyes flashing with anger. She couldn't speak, but she didn't need to. Her defiance was written in every inch of her face. The Baron's lips curled in disgust. "You wish to protect this filthy creature." He turned to the guards. "Take the human to the arena. Let him fight. If he survives, he lives another day." Lyra's heart dropped. The arena, a place of death. The Baron looked back at her. "And as for you?" A cruel smile spread across his face. "You will watch." The arena of blood. The arena of Sciron was a massive stone coliseum, built centuries ago for one purpose: entertainment through death. Tonight, it was Ethan's turn to die. Lyra was dragged to the royal balcony, her wrists bound, her throat raw from silent screams. The crowd roared, their alien voices echoing through the night. Ethan stood in the middle of the arena, barefoot, his body covered in dirt and bruises. His opponent was unlike anything he had faced before, a cyber-enhanced warbeast, twice the size of the Guardian from the tunnels. Metal plating covered its body. Its claws had been replaced with energy blades, a beast designed to kill. Lyra's heart pounded as the Baron stood beside her, watching the blood sport. "This," he said coldly, "is what happens when you trust a human." Ethan's hands curled into fists. He knew he had one chance. If he hesitated, he was dead. The fight for survival. The warbeast charged. Ethan dove to the side, barely dodging the swipe of its deadly claws. The sand beneath his feet shifted as he rolled, coming up just in time to see the beast turn toward him. It was fast. Too fast. Ethan barely had time to react before it lunged again. This time, he didn't run. Instead, he stepped forward. At the last second, he dropped low, sliding beneath the creature's body. He grabbed a loose chain from the sand and wrapped it around the beast's leg. Then, he pulled. The beast stumbled, crashing into the arena wall. The crowd gasped. The Baron's eyes narrowed. Ethan wasn't just running. He was thinking, fighting back. The warbeast roared, shaking off the chain. Its cybernetic implants glowed, charging up for a final attack. A blast of energy erupted from its claws, straight at Ethan. Lyra's eyes widened in horror. No, the energy bolt raced toward him. And then, something impossible happened. The energy stopped. It hung in the air, crackling, suspended. Lyra's hands were raised. Her silver eyes burned. The carvings from the tunnels, the power from before. She wasn't just controlling the Guardian. She could control energy. She clenched her fists, and the energy ripped backward. The warbeast was blasted by its own attack. It screeched, collapsing into the sand. Silence. Then, the crowd erupted. Lyra stood breathing hard, her body shaking. She had done it. The Baron stared at her, his face unreadable. Then he smiled. "You've been hiding something from me," he said softly. Lyra's blood ran cold. The real battle had just begun. The first word, and a rebellion sparks. The arena of Tyron had never been this silent before. The crowd, thousands of warriors, nobles, and alien elites, stared in disbelief at what had just happened. In the center of the arena, the warbeast lay dead. Ethan, a mere human slave, still stood. And above, on the royal balcony, Lyra had done the impossible. She had stopped the war beast's attack. She had controlled energy itself. And now her father, Baron Vorax, was looking at her not with rage, but with curiosity. The Baron's offer. The Baron stepped forward, his golden eyes locked onto his daughter. "You have hidden something from me," he said, his voice smooth, calculated. Lyra stood frozen, her hands still shaking from the power she had unleashed. Ethan, still in the arena, clenched his fists. He didn't trust the Baron's tone. The Baron smirked. "You could have been powerful, Lyra. And yet, you waste your gifts protecting this human." His gaze flicked to Ethan. Lyra stared at him, her breath shallow. The Baron's voice turned colder. "I will give you a choice." The guards raised their weapons. Ethan's heart pounded. Not good. The Baron's voice rang across the arena. "Prove your loyalty." The guard stepped forward, dragging something heavy into the center of the sandpit. A chained man. Ethan's stomach twisted. A human slave. Weak, fragile, defenseless. The Baron pulled a knife from his belt and placed it before Lyra. "Kill him," he said. Lyra's blood ran cold. The entire arena watched. Lyra's fingers curled into fists. She had spent her entire life being seen as weak, powerless, a mistake. And now her father was giving her one chance to prove herself. But at what cost? She looked at Ethan. He shook his head. She looked at the slave. His wide, terrified eyes begged for mercy. Her heart pounded in her chest. The Baron watched, waiting, expecting her to obey. Lyra took a slow breath. She bent down and picked up the knife. The crowd leaned forward. She stepped toward the man. Ethan's muscles tensed. Lyra raised the knife. The Baron's smirk widened. She took a slow breath and turned. With all her strength, she hurled the knife at her father's feet. It clattered against the stone. The arena gasped. The Baron's smile vanished. Lyra raised her head. Her silver eyes burned. For the first time in her life, she spoke. No. The single word echoed like a thunderclap. The spark of rebellion. The Baron stared at her, frozen. He had never heard her speak before. Not once. And now, her first word was defiance. The arena erupted. Some gasped in shock. Others murmured among themselves. And then, a sound cut through the chaos. A single cheer. Ethan turned sharply. One of the human slaves in the stands was cheering. Then another. Then another. And then it spread. The human slaves, the ones forced to watch, the ones beaten, the ones made to feel like nothing. They were cheering. For Lyra. For the first time in their lives, they saw a Xyronian stand against the Baron. And suddenly, the air in the arena shifted. The Baron's face darkened. "Enough," he growled. But the cheers grew louder. Lyra turned, looking at the humans rising from their seats, the Xyronians looking around in confusion. And deep inside her, she knew. This was it. The spark. The moment everything changed. Ethan saw it too. The rebellion had begun. The fall of the arena. The Baron raised his hand. The guards moved in. Lyra's heart pounded. Then, BM. A shockwave exploded through the arena. The ancient carvings on the stone walls glowed bright. Lyra gasped. The energy was responding to her. The power she had felt before, the power buried deep inside her, was awakening. The Baron took a step back. What is this? Lyra closed her eyes and let it flow. The carvings flared to life. The ground beneath them shook. Chains snapped. The human slaves broke free. And then, the arena collapsed. The escape. Ethan grabbed Lyra's hand. Run. They sprinted through the chaos as the arena crumbled around them. Guards shouted, but the rebellion had begun. Humans, once slaves, were fighting back. Xyronians, confused and afraid, were turning on each other. Lyra's mind raced. She had done this. She had spoken. She had defied her father. And now, nothing would be the same again. Ethan pulled her toward a crumbling exit. "We have to go. Now." Lyra turned for one last look. At her father. At the chaos she had created. At the world she was about to leave behind. And then, she ran. The Baron's last words. As the dust settled, Baron Vorex stood in the ruins of his arena. He watched the fires spread. Watched the humans break free. Watched his own empire crack. And yet, he smiled. "She thinks she's won," he murmured. His golden eyes gleamed. "This is just the beginning. The Baron falls, and the human legacy lies on." The fires of rebellion burned across Chiron. Smoke rose from the shattered arena, its once mighty walls now a graveyard of broken stone. The cheers of freedom still echoed in the air as the slaves fought back against their Chironian masters, and somewhere in the chaos, Lyra and Ethan ran. They had started this, and now they had to finish it. The chase through the ruins. The ground trembled beneath their feet as they sprinted through the crumbling city streets. Behind them, Baron Vorex's forces were hunting them down. Lyra's heart pounded in her chest. She could still feel the power from before, the energy that had surged through her in the arena. She didn't know how she had done it, but she wasn't afraid of it anymore. Ethan grabbed her wrist, pulling her toward an old transport tunnel beneath the city. "We need to disappear before they regroup." Lyra hesitated, looking back at the chaos. The humans were fighting for their lives. They had hope now. Because of her. Because she spoke. She clenched her fists. She wouldn't run forever. Ethan tugged her again. "Lyra, we don't have time." But before they could take another step, a deep voice boomed behind them. "You think you can escape me?" The final confrontation. Baron Vorex stood in the middle of the ruined street, unmoving. His golden eyes burned with a cold, terrifying rage. He wasn't running. He wasn't shouting. He was waiting. Lyra felt the hairs on her arms rise. Something was wrong. Then, a ripple in the air. And suddenly, the Baron moved. Faster than anything she had ever seen. Ethan barely had time to react before the Baron's clawed hand slammed into his chest. Ethan flew backward, smashing into a wall. Lyra's breath stopped. "Ethan." He groaned, struggling to get up. His face was twisted in pain. The Baron stepped forward. "Do you really think a human could defeat me?" Lyra's fingers curled into fists. The Baron smirked. "Look at you, my own daughter, siding with these insects. You could have had everything. You could have been powerful." Lyra's body trembled, but not with fear. With fury. "You were wrong about me," she signed with her hands. And then, she spoke. "And you were wrong about them." The ground shook. The energy inside her awakened. And this time, she didn't hold back. The power unleashed. The air around them cracked with light. The Baron's smirk faltered. Lyra lifted her hands, and the city responded. The ancient carvings, the ones etched into the walls, the stones, the streets, they all glowed. Energy rippled through the air, surging toward her. The Baron lunged. Enough of this. Lyra lifted her hand. The Baron's body froze midair. His eyes widened. "What?" Lyra closed her fist. The air around the Baron collapsed inward. The mighty ruler of Chiron screamed. For the first time, he was powerless. Lyra took a step forward, her voice steady. "You never had power, Father. You only had fear." The Baron struggled, but the energy held him like chains. Ethan slowly pulled himself up, watching in awe. "Lyra." The city walls groaned. The sky above cracked with light. Lyra had control now. The Baron thrashed. "You think you can rule them. They are weak. They are nothing." Lyra stared at him, her silver eyes glowing. "No," she said. They are free. And with one final motion, she let go. The energy exploded outward. The Baron was thrown back, crashing through the ruins. The ground beneath him collapsed, swallowing him whole. And just like that, Baron Vorax, ruler of Tyron, was gone. The dawn of a new era. The fighting stopped. The Tyronian soldiers, seeing their leader fall, dropped their weapons. The humans stood tall. The once enslaved people of Tyron looked at Lyra, their savior. Lyra turned, breathing heavily. The glow in her hands faded. She felt lighter. For the first time in her life, she was free too. Ethan walked toward her, wincing in pain. So, he smirked. You had that power the whole time. Lyra let out a soft breath, maybe even a laugh. She turned toward the people, the humans, the Tyronians, the rebels who had fought for freedom. And then she spoke one last time. We are free now. The crowd erupted. The war was over. And Lyra had found her voice. Epilogue. A new beginning. Days later, as the sun finally broke through Xyron's dark clouds, Lyra stood on the balcony of the castle, the same place her father once ruled from. Ethan leaned beside her, arms crossed. So, what now? Lyra didn't answer right away. She looked out at the city below. The humans were no longer slaves. The Xyronians were no longer rulers. They were something new, something better. Lyra turned to Ethan, her silver eyes soft. She smiled, and in a quiet, steady voice, she spoke. Now, we'd rebuild. The sun rose higher, and the legacy of humanity lived on.